My parents disowned me for marrying beneath me, now they want in because I'm pregnant. I'm 27 now, and to be honest, my relationship with my parents has always been complicated. Especially when it came to what they expected from me growing up. We lived in this wealthy suburb where appearances meant everything, and I was constantly being compared to my older sister, Amber, who's 29. Amber was the golden child, straight A's all through school, and now she's a high-powered lawyer working at some top-tier firm in New York. She pretty much nailed every goal our parents ever set. Me? I've always been more of a free spirit. Sure, I did okay in school, but I was drawn to the arts, painting, poetry, literature. I never clicked with math or science, the subjects my parents held in such high regard. Our family comes from what you'd call old money. My dad, Richard, who's 60 now, has always been loaded, and my mom, Rose, who's 58, comes from a family just as rich. She spends most of her time involved in charities, though if I'm being honest, it's more about social climbing than genuine generosity. My parents were always laser-focused on keeping up our status and rubbing shoulders with the right people. From the moment I was born, they basically laid out a blueprint for my life: go to an Ivy League school, ideally Harvard like my dad, major in something respectable like business or law, marry into another wealthy, well-connected family, and eventually work side by side with Amber in the family business. That was the dream. Their dream. But it sure wasn't mine. I was drawn to creativity, to self-expression. I found joy in art galleries, writing poems, sketching for hours. But my parents never took those things seriously, they saw them as cute distractions, not anything you could actually build a future on. Instead, they pushed me into what they thought were proper activities: tennis lessons, summer internships at my dad's firm. I went along with it, mostly to avoid the inevitable lectures, but deep down I always felt like a square peg in a round hole. When I got into Brown University, they were clearly disappointed it wasn't Harvard, but they begrudgingly accepted it. I think they hoped being around the right kind of people might straighten me out and bring me back onto their track. They had no idea Brown would lead me somewhere completely different, to someone who would change my life forever. I met Chad, he was 29 then, during my sophomore year in the most random, movie scene kind of way. I was racing through the campus coffee shop, late for class, not watching where I was going. He was walking out with a tray of coffees for his study group. We collided, and just like that, there was coffee everywhere on us, on the floor, total mess. But instead of freaking out, Chad just laughed and said, "Well, that's one way to break the ice." We both ended up skipping class that day, sitting and talking for hours like we'd known each other forever. Chad was the kind of guy my parents would have hated on sight, which, honestly, made him even more attractive to me. He came from a small, working-class town in Ohio. His dad worked in a factory, and his mom was a waitress. Chad was at Brown on a full scholarship and juggled part-time jobs just to stay afloat. He was studying to become a teacher because he genuinely believed in helping kids and making a difference. From the moment I met him, I felt something different. He was warm, hilarious, and incredibly driven. More than that, he made me feel seen, like he understood the real me, not the perfect version my parents always tried to mold. With him, I could let my guard down and just be myself, quirks and all. We started dating not long after that. And for the first time, I felt genuinely happy. Chad believed in me. He encouraged my art, pushed me to chase my dreams, and never once made me feel like my passions were silly. When I told him I wanted to be a graphic designer, he didn't scoff the way my parents always had. He helped me research schools, internships, anything that could help make it happen. Of course, my parents hated him the second they met him. It was during junior year, on Parents' Weekend. I'd been dreading that day and put off the introduction as long as I could, but eventually, I had to bite the bullet. It was a train wreck from the get-go. My parents couldn't see past Chad's background. To them, he was just some poor guy trying to use me to climb the social ladder. They made snide comments about his clothes, because heaven forbid he didn't wear designer brands. My mom kept picking at his Midwestern accent and asking if he was sure he wanted to just be a teacher, as though that wasn't a respectable path. My dad barely acknowledged Chad at all, he mostly talked over him and made it crystal clear that he didn't approve. It didn't matter to them how kind Chad was, how happy he made me, or how hard he worked. All they saw was someone who didn't fit into their world. When I tried to defend him, talking about his scholarship, his jobs, his values, my dad waved me off with, "Oh honey, don't be naive. Boys like that always have an angle." Still, despite all their disapproval, Chad and I stayed strong. We stuck together through those long nights studying, shared our wins, picked each other up when things got tough, and dreamed big together. After we graduated, Chad proposed. It wasn't some fancy, Instagram-worthy proposal. We were on a camping trip, something my parents could never even imagine doing. We were sitting by the fire under a sky full of stars when he turned to me and said, I know I can't give you the luxury you grew up with, but I promise to love you and support you in everything. Will you marry me? I didn't even hesitate. I said yes. But when we got back and I told my parents the news, all hell broke loose. My mom broke down in tears, sobbing like I'd just ruined my entire life. My dad turned red in the face, going on and on about how I was making a huge mistake. You're being foolish and short-sighted, they said. My mom kept pleading, think about your future. How will you keep up the lifestyle you're used to? What about your children, don't you want them to have the best? I tried to explain that Chad and I had already talked about all of that. Chad and I had talked everything through, we knew there'd be challenges ahead, but we had a plan. Still, none of that mattered to my parents. In their eyes, marrying Chad was the same as choosing a life of struggle and scraping by. When I refused to call off the engagement, they hit me with an ultimatum: either I end things with Chad, or they'd cut me off completely. No more financial support, no access to the trust fund, no inheritance, nothing. If you're so determined to live like a commoner, my father said coldly, then you can do it without our money. I was stunned. I knew they wouldn't be thrilled, but I never imagined they'd go that far. That moment opened my eyes to something I probably always knew deep down: their love had strings attached. As long as I followed their script, I was welcome. But the second I stepped off the path they'd chosen for me, they were ready to disown me. So, I chose Chad. We got married in a small, heartfelt ceremony with just a few close friends there to witness it. It wasn't the lavish society wedding my parents had always pictured for me, but it was full of love and honesty, and that made it perfect. Amber didn't come. She took my parents' side completely and told me flat out that I was making a huge mistake. The day after our wedding, I received a letter, not from my parents, but from their attorney. It was cold, formal, and to the point. I'd been written out of the will. Amber was now the sole heir to the family fortune. The letter also made it clear that I was no longer welcome in the family home and that if I tried to reach out again, they'd handle it through legal channels. It hurt more than I ever thought it would. Not because of the money, Chad and I were both working and doing just fine, but because my own family had chosen their pride and outdated ideals over me. Over my happiness. The people who raised me, who I believed loved me unconditionally, had tossed me aside because I didn't fit into the picture-perfect mold they wanted me to live in. For the next 3 years, there was complete silence between us. I reached out a few times early on, sent letters on holidays, left voicemails on birthdays, but I never got a single response. Eventually, I stopped trying. During those 3 years, Chad and I built a life. A real one. We worked hard, me as a graphic designer at a small advertising agency, and Chad teaching English at the local high school. We bought a cozy little house in a modest neighborhood, adopted a rescue dog we named Max, and found our own version of happiness. No, we didn't have the luxuries I grew up with. There were no exotic vacations, no high-end shopping sprees. We had to watch our spending and plan carefully. But we had love. We respected each other. And honestly, that felt richer than any trust fund ever could. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was living on my own terms, not someone else's. 3 years after the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. Chad and I were thrilled. We hadn't been actively trying, but we both wanted a family, and we couldn't wait to start this next chapter. We agreed to keep it quiet at first, just until we made it through the first trimester. About a week after we started sharing the news with friends, I got a text from Amber. It was the first thing I'd heard from her in 3 years. The message was brief, almost robotic. Mom and Dad heard about the baby. They want to talk. Call them. I just stared at my phone, confused. How did they even find out? I hadn't told anyone in my family, and I was pretty sure we didn't share any mutual friends who would have let something like that slip. Chad and I talked it over for a while. In the end, I decided to call them. A part of me wondered, maybe becoming grandparents had softened their hearts. My mom picked up on the second ring. The conversation was strange. Awkward, really. She did most of the talking. I could hear my dad in the background, his breathing loud and labored, occasionally grunting in agreement but never speaking directly to me. She congratulated me on the pregnancy, and then, without any mention of the past, started talking like everything was fine. She said they wanted to make amends and be involved in the baby's life. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. It was as if the last 3 years of complete silence had never even happened. Then she started listing all the things they wanted to give us, gifts for the baby. A fancy stroller. A custom-made crib. Designer clothes. Even a new car she said would be more suitable for a family. I sat there stunned. The list just kept going, and I realized the total cost had to be over 10 grand, easy. It didn't feel like a gesture of love. It felt like they were trying to buy their way back into our lives, into my child's life. I tried to decline as gently as I could, saying Chad and I were already preparing, and we had what we needed. That's when her tone shifted. "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "There's no way you two can provide for this child the way we can. We're just trying to help. Don't let your pride stop your baby from having the best start in life." Before I could say much else, she ended the call by saying they'd be sending the gifts anyway and that they fully expected to be part of their grandchild's life. She didn't once ask how I was feeling. Nothing about how the pregnancy was going. Not a single question about Chad. Just gifts. Expectations. Control. After I hung up, Chad was livid. When I told him what happened, he started pacing back and forth across our tiny living room. "They're trying to one-up us," he said. "They're showing you that they can provide things we can't. And once we accept those gifts, they'll hold them over our heads. That's their way in, so they can start telling us how to raise our kid." He wasn't wrong. I knew he wasn't. But still, a small part of me wanted to believe this might be their awkward attempt at reconnecting. Maybe, just maybe, if we gave them a chance, they'd come around. Accept Chad. Accept our life. "Maybe they've changed," I whispered. "Maybe becoming grandparents made them realize what really matters." Chad looked at me for a long moment and said, "Do you actually believe that? Or are you just hoping it's true because you miss them?" His words hit me like a punch to the gut. He was right. I did miss them. I missed the good moments, the family dinners, the laughter, the holidays, the little inside jokes. But I couldn't forget the bad, either. The pressure. The rejection. The way they had turned their backs on me the moment I didn't fit their idea of who I was supposed to be. When I didn't fall in line with what my parents expected of me, they pushed me aside like I didn't matter. Chad told me he'd support whatever I decided, but I could tell the idea of accepting anything from my parents made him uneasy. He was afraid it wouldn't stop with gifts, that it would come with strings attached and give them a way to control us, especially when it came to how we raised our child. "We've done just fine without them," he reminded me more than once. "We don't need their approval, and we definitely don't need their money." Meanwhile, Amber had been blowing up my phone. One moment she was trying to guilt-trip me for holding a grudge, and the next, she was bouncing off the walls talking about how excited she was to be an aunt. She couldn't wrap her head around why I was hesitant. "They're trying to make things right," she insisted. "Why can't you just let the past go?" But it's not that easy. The past doesn't just vanish because someone decides to send a gift. It's shaped who I am and the life I've chosen to build. It's not just history, it's the foundation of why things are the way they are. So, Reddit, that's where I was. Torn and unsure. And I needed some solid advice. Update 1. It's been about a month since I first posted, and a lot has happened since then. First off, I just want to thank everyone who offered advice and kind words. After a lot of conversations, some of them long and emotional, Chad and I decided to turn down my parents' gifts. It wasn't easy, but deep down, we knew it was the right choice for us. I called my mother and explained our decision. I tried to keep things calm and respectful. I told her we appreciated the gesture, but that we weren't comfortable accepting such extravagant gifts. I even tried to find a middle ground, suggesting that if they truly wanted to reconnect, maybe we could start with something simple like a dinner together to talk. She didn't take it well. She accused me of being ungrateful, of being spiteful and prideful. "You're depriving your child out of stubbornness," she snapped. "You're going to regret this when they grow up without the advantages we can give them." I held firm. I told her Chad and I were fully capable of providing for our baby, and that what we needed, what we wanted, was a real relationship with them, not a pile of expensive baby items. She hung up on me. I figured that was the end of it. I thought maybe they'd finally accept our decision and move on. I was wrong. A few days later, a delivery truck showed up at our house. The entire load was filled with every single item my mother had mentioned: the luxury stroller, the custom crib, designer baby clothes, even a brand new family car parked on our street. There was a note attached that read, "For our grandchild. We won't let your stubbornness deprive them of the best." Chad and I just stood there in disbelief. It felt like they had bulldozed right through the boundary we tried to set. We didn't even know what to do at first. We ended up putting everything in the garage just to get it out of sight while we figured out our next step. Chad wanted to send it all back right away. But I hesitated. I wasn't sure if we were ready to make that call yet. Then things got more complicated. The very next day, Amber showed up at our door, practically glowing with excitement over the baby and the gifts. She acted like the last few years of silence and hurt had never happened. "Isn't it amazing?" she said, beaming. "Mom and Dad are over the moon. They want to help however they can." I tried to explain why we weren't accepting the gifts, tried to help her understand our side. But she just didn't get it. "Why are you being so difficult?" she asked, clearly frustrated. "Most people would be thrilled to get so much help. You're treating them like they're the villains." That's when I lost my temper. "Love?" I shot back. "Is that what you call ignoring me for 3 years and then trying to buy their way back into my life? That's not love, Amber. That's control." She left in a storm, practically hissing, "You're making a huge mistake. If you keep this up, you're going to drive them away for good. And it'll be your fault when your child grows up without grandparents." And just when I thought the drama couldn't get any worse, the extended family jumped in. Word had spread, and suddenly I was getting calls and texts from aunts, uncles, cousins, each one trying to play mediator, telling me to let bygones be bygones. "They're your parents," Aunt Sharon said during one particularly exhausting phone call. "Of course they want to spoil their grandchild. Why are you being so stubborn about it?" I tried to explain about the silence, the emotional abandonment, the years of being ignored. I tried to make them see that this wasn't just about baby gifts. It was about boundaries, about respect, about whether my parents even saw me as a person or just a disappointment to fix with money. But most of them just didn't get it. Chad stayed by my side through it all. He reminded me, gently but firmly, "We've built something real here. We have each other. Our child will have everything they need: love, stability, and 2 parents who are present and devoted." I'm 16 weeks along now. This should be a joyful time. But instead, I feel like I'm carrying this emotional weight around with me every day. The gifts are still in the garage. Just sitting there. Like this heavy question mark we haven't answered yet. Chad wants to donate everything to a local women's shelter. And part of me agrees. But part of me still wonders, once we do that, is it really over? Is there no way back? Amber's still texting me pictures of nursery ideas and baby outfits like everything is normal. My parents haven't reached out again since the truck, but I know they're waiting. Waiting for some sign that the door is still open. The pressure hasn't let up. I'm still getting calls and messages every day from relatives telling me what I should do. Lately, Chad and I have been seriously talking about seeing a family counselor, someone neutral who can help us sort through all of this and figure out the healthiest way forward. Maybe there's a perspective we haven't considered. Maybe it would help us draw clearer lines or build a bridge, if one can still be built. For now, we're taking things day by day. I'm doing my best to focus on the positives: this pregnancy, our home, the love we share. But the drama with my family never feels too far away. All I can do is hope that whatever decision we end up making, it'll be the right one. Not just for us, but for our child. Final update. 6 months have gone by since that last post, and I wanted to share where things stand now. A lot has changed, and I've made some difficult but necessary choices. Chad and I decided to go through with family counseling. We had several sessions, some together, some one-on-one, and those talks helped us work through the mess of emotions tied up in my relationship with my parents. Working with the counselor gave us something we hadn't had in a long time: clarity. We started to truly understand our values, our priorities, and how to draw firm, healthy boundaries. But even with that newfound understanding, the pressure from my family only got worse. Apparently fed up with us ignoring them, my parents started showing up at our house. No warning. No call ahead. They'd just stand outside, knocking for what felt like forever, calling through the door that they just wanted to talk. It was overwhelming, especially as I got further along in my pregnancy. I was already dealing with the discomfort that comes with being in the final stretch: fatigue, swelling, back pain, and now I had this added stress pressing in from every side. Amber didn't let up either. She kept sending messages every day, trying to guilt me into backing down. She'd flip between saying I was tearing the family apart and acting like I was the unreasonable one. Eventually, she even threatened to cut me out of her life entirely if I didn't reconcile with our parents, which was ironic, considering we hadn't really spoken much in years anyway. Then came the moment everything changed. I was around 32 weeks pregnant when my parents decided to show up at my workplace. They came storming into the lobby, demanding to see me, saying they had a right to be part of their grandchild's life. My co-workers were caught off guard and visibly uncomfortable. My boss had to step in and tell them to leave or he'd call the police. That was it for me. In that moment, I finally saw things for what they really were. My parents hadn't changed. Not even a little. They weren't trying to reconnect out of love. They were trying to bulldoze their way back into my life and call it reconciliation. It wasn't about building a relationship, it was about getting their way, no matter who they hurt in the process. Chad and I talked it through at length, both with each other and with our counselor. After everything, we decided it was time to go completely no contact, not just with my parents, but with Amber too. We worked with a lawyer to draft and send a formal cease and desist letter, making it crystal clear that any further attempts to contact us would be treated as harassment. We finally donated all the baby items, everything they had sent months ago, to a local women's shelter, just like Chad had originally suggested. Letting go of those things wasn't easy. There was so much tied up in them: conflict, hope, disappointment. But in the end, we knew it was the right choice. We didn't want our child's life to start out with emotional strings attached. The day after we mailed the letter, I blocked my parents and Amber on every platform. All of it gone in one click. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but also one of the most freeing. Almost instantly, the weight I'd been carrying, the constant anxiety, the mental tug-of-war, it started to lift. And then, 2 months ago, our daughter Susan came into the world. Her birth wasn't easy. There were complications, and there were moments when I wished I had my mom there, if only for comfort. But Chad never left my side. He was incredible, steady, calm, strong. We got through it together. These early weeks of parenthood have been both exhausting and beautiful. Susan is everything. She's perfect. And watching Chad hold her, sing to her, change her little socks, it makes me fall in love with him all over again, every single day. We might not have the luxury and high-end lifestyle my parents always envisioned for me, but we have something more important. We have love. We have peace. We have each other. Looking at Susan, I know deep down that we made the right choice. I want her to grow up in a home where she feels safe and valued, not judged or controlled. I want her to learn that her worth doesn't come from wealth or status, but from who she is on the inside. And most of all, I want her to know what unconditional love feels like: real love, not the kind that comes with conditions or expectations. No, she won't be spoiled with designer clothes or luxury cribs. But she'll be surrounded by warmth, encouragement, and 2 parents who will always cheer her on, no matter what path she chooses. She'll learn that it's okay to speak up, to draw boundaries, and to walk away from people who don't respect them, even if those people are family. This journey hasn't been easy. It's been painful, and messy, and filled with moments of doubt. But I don't regret a thing. We're moving forward, focused on our little family and the future we're building together. And to everyone who's supported us along the way, thank you. Your words, your kindness, your advice, it's meant more than you know. Here's to new beginnings. To choosing love. To choosing happiness even when it's the harder road to take.